The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. So I'm going to talk about a subject today, responsibility from a Buddhist perspective. And it may not be everybody's cup of tea, but it's been a really interesting journey for me on this subject. So I thought I'd share kind of what happened and a bit about how I perceive responsibility. When I was growing up, my family was argumentative, to put it mildly. We fought about everything, and we had views about everything, terrible views, so many. And there was a lot of drinking, and it was chaotic. And I was the youngest in that family, so I tried to make peace in the family. Sorry. Which was about as helpful as anything. But anyway, that's what I did. That's what made sense to me. So after I left my family, I was still an argumentative and strong-viewed person, and actually quite reactive. All my life I've been quite reactive to things. And I've thought to myself, well, this is just how I am. I can't not react when someone says something strongly or even just moves in a way that I feel is threatening. Boy, I'm reacting. And I said to a monk once, maybe I'm just hardwired and I can't change this reaction. And she said, no, you're not hardwired. So, okay, keep going. So, in a sense, there's a cellular reaction in our bodies. So we think, well, this is the way I am. But through the course of meditation and training, and really, I would say within the last 3 or 4 years, I have learned that I can do something about my reaction to things, that I am not hardwired. We all, I think, have moments where all of a sudden we're really still and we respond to something in a quiet, calm way. And that's really what practice is learning how to do that more and more. Now, I'd like to define what the word responsibility means, because that's actually helpful to get a sense. It was helpful for me to get a sense of why I feel so responsible for things. Anyway, Webster's defined it as the ability to answer for one's conduct or obligations, to be trustworthy, able to choose for oneself between right and wrong, to have accountability, to be reliable, and then something for which one is responsible. And they put colon, burden. Well, that's really a good way of... I can see why I felt so responsible as a kid. Because if things are chaotic, responsibility was the way of trying to bring stability into the picture. So it's actually helpful to look at that. I feel this responsibility in a reaction to chaos. Oh, it's my responsibility to make things okay. And actually it's not. And that's part of what this Dharma talk's about. We look at responsibility, and there's a me there. We're responsible for our jobs, we're responsible for our conduct, we're responsible for our religion, our family, our country even. We feel responsible for it. And that creates this strong views, strong ways of looking at things of, well, if we're responsible, then we've got to make it all right. In doing this talk, I looked at the word responsibility, and I saw that it had 3 letters, I. And I thought, well, it's heavily weighted on the me side, I. However, I wondered, is there a way to lighten the burden of responsibility? And I would say, yes, there is. When we undertake Buddhist training or practice, we start often with a wish or an aspiration, and to do better, to help in some way. It's a very pure intention that we bring to this practice. And certainly, we're taught in this practice that there are precepts to follow, there are ways of not doing harm, that we're responsible for our actions. And so as a consequence, if we look at our actions, we can see what was successful in terms of relating to other beings and what was not. So that's what I would say is the positive side of responsibility, of the attempt to do better and the attempt to do no harm. But I think one of the questions for me in terms of responsibility is if we are interconnected with other beings, well, are we responsible for their training? What does that mean? Are we responsible for someone else's training? And that's a really important question. I hope to answer it in some ways, but it's a very big question, and we really have to find it out for ourselves. There's a beautiful story in the Dhammapada, which is the sayings of the Buddha. And I love the Dhammapada. I read it regularly, in part because it's full of stories. That's what it is. It's just stories. And the Buddha then says something, and the teaching from the Buddha comes as part of that story. But I've noticed when I read it, I can read various stories over and over again, and then all of a sudden, the penny drops, and I go, oh, that's what the Buddha is saying. That's what he meant. So this was one of those stories. It's about Panthika, the naked ascetic. Now, at the time of the Buddha, and still in India today, there are yogi practitioners who are naked. They sit out in the sun. They expose themselves to the elements. This is part of their ascetic practice. And this ascetic was being supported by a laywoman. And she fed him and provided him with shelter when he wanted it and took care of him. And one day she invited the Buddha to come speak because the Buddha was in their area, in their town. And all the people were talking about how wonderful he was. So she invited him for a meal. And her ascetic was hiding out in the back room. So she fed the Buddha, and then the Buddha traditionally gives a Dharma talk in gratitude for the alms. And as he was beginning the talk, the naked ascetic got really angry because he could hear that the woman was really moved by what the Buddha was saying. And he walked out and he yelled at the Buddha and he called him all kinds of names. And then he called the woman all kinds of names and he turned around and stomped out. And the Buddha went on with his Dharma talk. And the woman was in shock and wasn't listening. And so the Buddha stopped his Dharma talk, and he asked her, he said, are you able to follow this? And she said, no, I'm so upset by what happened. And he said, one should not consider the faults of others, nor their doing or not doing good or bad deeds. One should consider only whether one has done or not done good or bad deeds. Well, the penny dropped with that story for me, because all of a sudden I realized, what's the Buddha? One of the most important things I think the Buddha is continually telling us is to look within and to be responsible for ourselves and to not get distracted by what other people are doing. Now, I certainly am in complete sympathy with that woman. I mean, haven't we all been in a situation, if you're a parent and your kid is making a complete disaster of some family gathering or something, I mean, it happens. It doesn't matter. Somebody does something and we feel responsible for what they're doing, and we're mortified. I mean, that's a pretty common thing that probably all of us have at one time or another experienced. But what the Buddha is saying is, let it go. Let it go. Do your practice. Are you causing harm or doing something that causes difficulties? Look at that. I mean, who of us at times doesn't feel distracted by what our country is doing and what's going on in politics or whatever? I mean, these are the things that hook us, where we start feeling caught up in what other people are doing. So it's very interesting. I also find it interesting to look within and say, well, why am I being caught up about what this person is doing? That is really important, because oftentimes we're caught up by what someone's doing because we ourselves do it. Don't want to look at that particularly, but oftentimes we ourselves have the same fault or susceptibility to error, and we're not making the error at the time, and so we can be very, well, look at them, but in reality, look at us, look inside. One of the things I love about Buddhism is that it gives us a way to look at those things that we may do that cause harm and to open our hearts to them. Rather than judge ourselves, we can do contrition, sangha, say, yes, I made a mistake there, I did that. We can look at it, be sorry for it, offer it up to the Buddhas and ancestors, and go on. There's this incredible washing that's an opportunity for us. And that's how we can be responsible. That's a responsibility to the Buddha. And the Buddha's responsibility to us is to allow us to learn from our mistakes. And in fact, our mistakes can be incredibly helpful. Still, I think we're inclined to take on other people's problems or other people's, or to have strong views about what other people should be doing. And I ask, do we really know what's right for another person? Do we really see the whole picture of what's going on? This doesn't mean we don't sympathize. It doesn't mean we don't offer wise counsel to someone else. What it's pointing to is to be looking inside at ourselves and being careful how caught up we get in what someone else is doing. there was a situation that really brought this Dharma talk together for me that I was involved with. There was someone who I'm close to and love, and their situation was very complicated, and they were vulnerable. And they were vulnerable, but they had created their situation. So I was drawn to want to fix the situation. Really wanted to make this person safe again. And yet for a variety of circumstances, I ended up not taking any action. So it was very interesting. Now, I am not in any way, shape, or form saying that the way to life is to don't take action. So don't walk away from this Dharma talk saying, Reverend Amanda says, don't do anything. No, not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is we have to sit very still in situations where we're feeling strong reactions to them. And then ask ourselves, what's good to do here? Should I do something? Should I interfere? Whenever I kept asking, what should I do? Hang on. All right. Whenever I kept asking, what's good to do here? I kept getting that sense, just be still. So okay, and it happened several times in the course of what was going on. Just stay still, just stay still. Believe me, I offered merit to this person. I offered loving kindness. I recited scriptures for their benefit. I put them down for transfer of merit. There's lots of things we can do to help beings. But to actually go down and get involved in the situation kept coming up as not good to do. And in hindsight, what's happened is the person actually has resolved their own situation. Much to my relief, because I really want them to do well. And there was something about them getting stronger from resolving their own problems. So it's quite a powerful situation. So we know the question that arises in religion, another religion, that, am I my brother's keeper? And it's an interesting question from a Buddhist perspective, because Buddhism talks about the interconnectedness, that we are interconnected with each other. And yet, when someone's doing wrong, is that our responsibility? And sometimes it is. It's important for us to say something if we see something or we know something. And sometimes it's important for us to even say to the person, gee, I'm really uncomfortable with what's going on here. But in terms of feeling like we're responsible and have to solve the situation for another, no, that's perhaps beyond what the Buddha is pointing to. The Buddha pointed to the woman and said, just look at yourself. And she was obviously, she had offered a meal to the Buddha. She had done good. There was nothing that she needed to be upset about. It's an interesting question. It does not mean we don't show up. It does not mean we don't take action. It just means that we need to be still in how we do it. Our precepts, the 3 pure precepts, cease from evil or harm, cease from harm, do only good, do good for others. Those are our guides. And when we sit still with something, we can ask, is this good for me to do? Is this good? Will this be helpful to the other person? And then follow what we're hearing and look at the results. Because oftentimes we think, yes, this is the way to go, and then, no. You look around and there's a big mess to clean up. Okay, maybe that wasn't the best way to do it. You know, we take bodhisattva vows at some point when we're at the precepts, and one of the first bodhisattva vow is, however innumerable beings may be, I vow to save them all. And of course, when you first hit that, you think, how on earth? There's billions of people. How are we going to save everybody? But the saving is a really important question. What does it mean to save another person? And how does it manifest? And it's an offering. The bodhisattva vows are an offering. We're offering to help all beings. We're not responsible for all beings. We're offering. The way we train helps them. The deeper we go, the more we can see how important it is that we regard everyone as precious, and that we learn over time how to refrain from negating others. And in some ways, I would say this is a Buddhist responsibility, is to see beings as precious, to see everything as precious, and not to negate. That's our responsibility. And yet, again, we can't insist on this. It's something we learn. And when you feel that something is precious, that's when you get hooked. It's easier to get hooked because, I really love this person, or I really love this situation. And therefore, it's got to go the way I think. And that's where we run into trouble. That's where we stumble. And just what about also if someone's coming at us with hatred or ill will? What's our responsibility there? And sometimes all we can do is just stay still and not say something back. Or if we say something back, then have to apologize for our part of stuff. It's gentle, isn't it? It's not a burden. Responsibility can seem like a burden, but actually there's something kind of fun in this process of looking at ourselves and then watching and growing from what we do. In the Avatamsaka Sutra, it has this beautiful line, and I'm quoting, "Wishing to bring sentient beings to maturity, Buddhas cultivate for oceans of eons." Now, that's like the Bodhisattva vow, all right? So the Buddhas are saying the Bodhisattva vows too, and they're cultivating for eons. So what does that mean? Well, we're always working. If the Buddha is cultivating, what about us? We're cultivating too. So it lightens this idea that we have to have something done in our time frame, but instead opens us up to how long it takes to do these things and to give it some space. Reverend Master Daizui used to say the bigger he could make something, the less he worried about it. I find that very, very helpful. So, as you must gather by now, it's really important. Our responsibility is to look at what we do, look at what we think, look at our intentions, and then, if there's something amiss, take responsibility for it and clean it up as best we can. Reverend Master Ju used to say Zen training is for spiritual adults. You have to be a grown-up to do this. You can't get things your way. You have to listen to the Dharma, work at it, and make it your own. You can't just take something because somebody says it. It works on the supposition that all of us, each of us, is working on ourselves. And what I'm saying here, does this apply to you? Does it make sense? Vice versa. That's just how it is. It takes patience and endurance to allow someone, including ourselves, to make mistakes and to learn. And yet, it's also important sometimes to point something out to someone. So it's both. And there is no answer as to what's right. That's why we try and be still. And we always have the aspiration, which is just a beautiful part of it. That's our responsibility, is to aspire for both ourselves and others that deep training will occur. I wrote down, we cannot fix samsara. We cannot fix it. And we all think, oh, if I only do this, I'll fix the situation. But we can listen, and we can care deeply. You know, the situation with the earth is kind of teetering on edge, and it's so hard not to get caught up in it and to do our part. If everybody did their part, wouldn't that be a different world? You know? So we can't make everybody do our part, but we can do our part. And the more people that are doing their part, that benefits things in ways that we can't understand. So that's our offering to things. Anyway, I just find it very helpful when I'm caught in something or I'm feeling I'm reacting strongly to look within myself and ask why I feel this is so important. And ask also, am I getting hooked? And of course, we all want to say, we all at times think, I know what this person should do. We all get caught in that one. And if we remember, it's good to be still and to look. I realized that for myself, coming from such a volatile, reactive background, sitting still is actually the antidote to that. That's the cure for me. It isn't that I get it right or that I don't no longer react. It's really just that I make the effort to be still. And that's what helps. That's what helps the situation. Reverend Master Ji-Yu used to talk about the third position, which is really just the place in our hara, where we bring ourselves, the two halves of the brain in gasho. Even for a moment, it's helpful. And it takes continual training and practice to be still. And that's really what our responsibility is. That is what responsibility is. And that we can all do. And training's a very humbling process. Anyway, thank you all very much.